All this is going to happen over time. But, in the very short term, yes, there's always going to be losers from the tariffs and winners from the tariffs. And the politicians always pay attention. So when Trump puts tariffs on imports, there are some domestic businesses that will benefit from those tariffs.
Trust me, you don't want to miss this latest and important video of Peter Schiff. The dollar is in trouble, and the world knows it. While the US prints money like there's no tomorrow, something big is happening. Gold is surging, and the game is changing. What does this mean for your savings, your future, and the entire global economy? Peter Schiff breaks it all down.
In order to pay these higher prices that are going to get a lot higher as a result of these tariffs, right? Every item that is imported into this country from Mexico, Canada, or China, and those are some of our biggest suppliers of goods, right? And one of the reasons that Mexico and Canada are such big suppliers is because they're so close. And yes, if Canada has to find the next highest bidder, it could be problematic for certain things like energy. The energy that they're sending to America, it's going to be harder to send that energy to Europe, right? So, but certain things, what about gold? I mean, people have asked me, this is going to be a boom for the Canadian gold mining industry because gold right now, even though it's down about $14 now, it was up 14 earlier. Now it's at a record high in Canadian dollars, a record high. It got the high that it hit a record high on Friday. It got above 2,820. And now it's back to 27.85, but it's at a record high in Canadian dollars. And wages are going down in Canada right now for gold miners because the Canadian dollar is weaker, right? And so relative to the price of gold, it's cheaper to hire Canadian workers. Now, of course, the Canadian workers are going to be demanding pay hikes because prices will go up for certain things, but for certain things they're going to come down, right? Because now they're not going to be sending as much food down to America, so that food will be cheaper for them, right? Because they'll have more supply domestically, and so the price will be lower. But think about these gold mining companies in Canada. Gold is soaring, and their energy costs are going to go down, right? If Canada exports less oil and gas to America because Americans can't afford to buy it, that means there's a greater supply of oil and gas in Canada for Canadians to use at a lower price. And so if you're a mining company and your labor costs are down and your energy costs are down, so now Canada can focus on mining more gold, right? And ultimately producing less oil and gas. Because what can they do with that gold? They can send it right to China. See, it's very easy to send China gold. It's not as easy to send them oil and gas, but it's very easy to take that oil and gas and use it to mine gold and then put the gold on a plane and send it over to China because they're happy to buy it, right? And so the Mexican economy, the Canadian economy, yes, over time, they will find alternative uses for their resources, for their capital, for their labor. If they're not going to sell stuff to Americans, they'll do something else, right? And ultimately, that is in their best interest, right? The sooner the world realizes that they're being taken for a ride by the United States, that they're accumulating dollars that are eventually going to collapse, and and they're not going to be able to buy anything, so they are wasting their scarce resources satisfying the needs of Americans when they should be using those resources to satisfy the needs of their own citizens or of citizens in other countries who can actually pay for what they've got to sell because they make stuff that the Canadians need. They make stuff that the Mexicans need. So all this is going to happen over time. But, in the very short term, yes, there's always going to be losers from the tariffs and winners from the tariffs. And the politicians always pay attention. So when Trump puts tariffs on imports, there are some domestic businesses that will benefit from those tariffs. And those are the businesses that are making the donations to the politicians, even though the broader interest is hurt. And the biggest losers from these tariffs are the middle class and the poor, right? Because they're the ones that are most impacted by higher energy prices, higher food prices, higher prices for all these goods, right? The rich, they don't really pay attention to a lot of these prices, but they really hit the poor and the middle class. But the politicians don't care about the broad interest. They care about the special interest of their donors. And to the extent that Canada retaliates and tries to put tariffs on some American products, that may benefit a narrow interest in Canada, because businesses will be hurt in Canada because they're going to earn less money. Tariffs, in addition to being, a way to raise revenue, so it's a way for the government to tax its citizens, not foreigners. But tariffs have also been used to protect domestic industries from competition. Now, why does that work? Why does a tariff protect domestic industries? Because it raises the price of imports. Now, if, as Donald Trump and all these experts are saying, if the foreigners just eat the tariffs, well, then why do they work as protection? The only reason they work is because the foreigners don't eat the tariffs. They pass the tariffs on to the domestic consumers. And so if I am a U.S. manufacturer and I make widgets, and now Canadian widgets are 25% more expensive because of the tariffs, then that helps me, because now, even if I'm not as efficient a producer as the Canadians, maybe my widgets are 20% more expensive than the Canadian widgets. And because of that, I'm not selling that many widgets, right? People are buying the Canadian widgets because they're cheaper. Well, now with the tariff, if the Canadian widgets are now more expensive, well, people are going to buy my widgets, right? Because I'm now cheaper, because my widgets are not subject to the tariffs. So it's a win for me, right, as a U.S. widget maker, but all of the customers, they lose, because they lost access to the cheaper widgets. They're buying my more expensive widgets. Now, the argument is, if you protect the U.S. industry from foreign competition, the U.S. industries will grow, right? They are going to use that capital, that money they earn that they wouldn't have earned, to invest in their business, grow the business, become more productive. And so maybe we could use these tariffs to help grow the domestic industry. But in reality, the foreign competition actually helps the domestic companies get better, because they have to be better than the imports. It pushes them. Like, one of the reasons that U.S. automobiles that were crappy got a lot better, is because of competition from Japanese cars or German cars. If we had responded to the growth of the automobile industry in Japan and in Germany with tariffs to protect General Motors or protect Chrysler, and plus, why do you want to protect a mature industry? The idea is that if you have a nascent industry that's just trying to grow, maybe they need protection. But we dominated the automobile market, but it was foreign competition that made us better. So I don't even think the tariffs necessarily work. And of course, a lot of companies, American companies, that try to compete globally, if a lot of their components of their production go up in price, we're going to hit Americans with tariffs on, a lot of things that are coming in from Canada. Energy. Well, now U.S. energy is going to be more expensive. Well, now a U.S. company that needs energy is going to have to pay more money for oil and gas. Doesn't that reduce the competitiveness of that company relative to other companies who could buy energy without having to pay those U.S. tariffs? So I don't think it's a necessarily a great way to protect your own business. But the reason in theory that it works is because it increases prices of foreign imports, which is exactly what is going to happen. Look, a lot of houses burn down in California that they need to be rebuilt. Well, a lot of that lumber comes in from Canada. Well, now that lumber is going to be subject to a 25% tariff. So that is going to increase the cost of building. It's going to increase the cost of insurance. Because if your house burns down, they have to rebuild it. Well, if it's made of wood and the wood is going to be a lot more expensive because of these tariffs, don't you think the insurance companies are going to raise their premiums because they know that the tariffs have increased the cost of wood? And even if the wood that is used in a particular house didn't come from Canada, it's still going to be more expensive.
The writing is on the wall. Gold is rising, the dollar is sinking, and the global power shift is accelerating. The question is, are you paying attention? If you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button, subscribe for more, press the bell icon, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Stay ahead of the curve, because the future waits for no one. Thank you.